So, today we are going to discuss some population issues in the framework of MDGs. In the last lecture, we were discussing about what MDGs are. MDG stands for Millennium Development Goal, and there are 8 goals. Against each goal, we have certain indicators. These and targets have been assigned to each indicator, that by year 2015, we must be achieving these indicators. They include infant mortality, maternal mortality, child mortality, school enrollment, gender disparity in education, and so on. Today, we will see that in the light of these MDGs, what kind of new issues have emerged in the study of population. Now, since these are 2 last lectures, today's and then one more, I thought that it will be a good idea if we talk about what are the new frontiers of research and what are new issues, what kind of paradigmatic changes are taking place in the studies of population, quantitative as well as qualitative. Now, one thing which emerges in the light of Millennium Development Goals, National Population Policy 2000, is that to understand and solve problems of population in India, we require a disaggregated or area specific approach. In your sociological language, you can say that we are moving towards hyper differentiation of demographic reality, and in a vast plural heterogeneous country of continental size, India, the patterns of relationships are not same everywhere. So, what is true about some relationships, a relationship between education and fertility, one state or in one district or one block may not be true in the other districts or blocks or villages. Similarly, the issue of level of analysis, what is true at the micro level may be different from what is true at the macro level. So, from looked at from that perspective, we can say that India is a vast country with diverse patterns of socio-economic development. As a result of that, the demographic situation in India is highly fragmented. Lessons learned from one setting, therefore, cannot be used in other settings. I remember for a long time we used to talk about Kerala model of population policy or Kerala model of fertility transition. Now, one has to understand in the light of this area specific approach or National Population Policy 2000, that what is true for Kerala is not necessarily true for UP or Bihar or for the states of northeast at epistemological level as well as at the policy level, at the level of knowledge and also at the level of interventions. You have diversity of patterns and the reality is fragmented. After success of population control program in Kerala, many demographers and planners started talking about Kerala model in 1990s. But it has now become clear that since the socio-economic, infrastructural and geographical conditions of high fertility states UP, Bihar, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh are markedly different from those of Kerala, the Kerala model cannot be applied to all states mechanically. Also, states with their specificities will have to develop their own models of action. So, you can talk of Bihar model, you can talk of Jharkhand model, you can talk of Himachal model of demographic transition. Interestingly, seemingly opposite factors such as affluence and poverty may produce the same result. So, in some situations at some levels in some areas, increasing affluence, rationality and rational choice approach may explain why fertility is declining, but at other places fertility may decline due to poverty. I have seen several articles on Kerala in which it was shown that in many parts of Kerala fertility declined not because of education or social development, but more because of perceived poverty, and people thought that with growing poverty there will be more Malthusian pressure on family resources. A large family might imply increasing poverty. So, people became more careful. But at some other places it is urbanization, industrialization, social mobility, mobility aspirations or affluence which affects fertility in the same way in which it affected fertility in the western countries. Of late, Himachal Pradesh has emerged as the lowest fertility state. The case of Himachal Pradesh needs detailed examination. This is one area in which not much research is done, and Population Foundation of India and several other donors are now interested in launching. They are looking for research organizations to take up studies of demographic transition in Himachal Pradesh. In this context, the following remarks of Professor Ashish Bose are worth considering. The implication is that there is little scope for a uniform all India population program. So far we ran a uniform all India program. So, when we decide about incentive, disincentives, communication strategies or conducting surveys, we decide about them uniformly that they will apply to all the states. If we fix some incentive after 2 children, we fix the same incentive for all the states in the country, while some states may not need them at all and some other states may need greater incentives. So, to quote Ashish Bose, the implication is that there is little scope for a uniform all India population program, whether in regard to actions which operate on the birth rate or in regard to actions which operate on the death rate. Yet to a very large extent our family planning programs are more or less uniform throughout the country. Virtually the same package is delivered to the high population growth areas as to the low population growth areas. In this context, I must say that yes, in the 11th 5-year plan, there has been an attempt to divide different states into different categories, priority states, non-priority states, and slightly different approaches are being adopted to control population growth in states belonging to different categories. There is now a general agreement among planners, coordinators of the program, donors, program managers that this situation must change and we must have separate policies or regionally differentiated policy, a phrase which I found in literature on demographic diversity in Russia. In Russia at one time situation was very similar to that of India, that in the Asian part of Russia fertility was high and in the European part of Russia fertility had gone below the replacement level. So, the communist rulers of Russia were wondering what to do, what is practical and what is also consistent with the Marxist framework. Finally, with lot of debate and controversy, it was decided that they will have different policies for European part and the Asian part. Something like that may be required for India. And not only areal differences, there are also social class differences. Population problems as well as the status of health in India have religious, regional, ethnic, social class and urban rural dimensions. National Family Health Survey third, NSSO survey on morbidity, health care and condition of the aged, one of the first and very important survey of health. All those students who are interested in health must go through some pages of this health report, NSSO 2006, and smaller surveys have established the nature of variation in population and health parameters according to socio-economic and cultural characteristics of people, urban, rural, tribal, non-tribal, educated, uneducated, poor, rich, below poverty line, above poverty line and so on. 11th 5-year plan has stressed the social class differences in economic conditions as well as demographic behavior. These differences, their causes and consequences need to be explored further. These are new issues. Now, studies have consistently shown that the relationships between socio-economic factors and demographic factors do not have a fixed pattern. What does that mean? Do not have a fixed pattern. That means that the strength of correlation, the direction of relationship, number and nature of mediating variables and moderator variables in different contexts are different. Relationships which exist at the micro level may be different from those existing at the macro level. What I mean to say is that if you run a regression analysis at the level of household, you may arrive at one set of results. If you run the same regression with the same variables at village level or community level or block level or district or state levels, your results may be very different and often contradictory. So, the level of analysis is also important. If somebody has done a study of correlation of fertility at the state level and has arrived at certain results, whether education affects fertility or not, or what is the strength of correlation, what is the direction, that need not necessarily apply to relationship at the village or household level. So, you have to make a distinction between studies done in different contexts and studies done at the different levels. One has to study the linkages between population and other factors at different levels. Yet, an overwhelming majority of people in both urban and rural areas want a small family. This is also true. Almost all surveys are showing that most people in India want a small family now. In a small family, again there may be some differences. Some people may want 2 children, some may want 1 child, some may not want any child at all, some may want 1 son, 1 daughter, some may want 2 sons, some may want 2 children irrespective of sex, but everywhere now preference is for a small family. And wherever some people want slightly more number of children, that is because infant and child mortality are high, and with time as mortality declines, their number, the number of people who will want a small family will increase further. A number of people wanting more children due to high mortality will decline, and the number of couples wanting a smaller family will increase. So, most people today have knowledge of and access to contraceptive method, that is also true, but there are many who do not have access to acceptable contraceptive methods. As a result of that, as said earlier also, in India the unmet need for contraception, that is percentage of couples who do not want more children, but are not practicing family planning is quite large, that is about 20%. In 10th 5-year plan, I was reading in the chapter on population, they said that the 3 major causes of high population growth rate in India are age distribution, high mortality and unmet need. Now, age distribution, because even when total fertility rate has declined, our birth rate continues to remain high due to young age structure, and its contribution is as high as 60%. You will wonder how age distribution alone is responsible for 60% variation in growth rate, high growth rate. That 60% high growth rate is due to age structure, that is true. That means other factors remaining same, when our age structure becomes older and older, as the age structure of European countries is, without any other change in fertility levels, our birth rate will decline by 60%. In addition, there are some couples who want more children because of high mortality, and their number was estimated to be around 20, and there is 20% unmet need, that there are couples who do not want additional child, but because acceptable and effective modern contraceptive is not available to them, either they do not know or they do not have access to it, or there are side effects or rumors or misconceptions or side effects. So, they are not using them, their percentage is about 20. Now, various surveys are showing, in some state you find it to be 18%, in some states 17%, number is declining. Broadly it is about 20%. Now, demographics, another issue, that in the past we always thought that population growth is bad. Now, there is controversy about that also, and demographic change is now seen both as having positive and negative implications for human resource development. While the continuing high growth rate of population may be disadvantageous in macroeconomic terms, in terms of growth rate of income, in terms of per capita income, in terms of inequality, Gini coefficient, Lorenz curve and so on. The country has the advantage of opening of demographic window for nearly 20 years, and there may be advantages of high fertility at the micro level or at household or village levels. If the growing proportion of young population can be supported, that we have seen in one earlier lecture, that if the growing proportion of young population can be supported with adequate resources and they have an encouraging atmosphere, they can exploit opportunities opening in the industrially advanced countries, which are aging economies, in the new sectors in the national economy. In some smaller countries, particularly in several of the Gulf countries, interestingly, sending and receiving large number of migrants every year. The demographic window may open and close several times, because in this period, say people in younger age groups, say 20 to 25, they migrate to other countries in search of employment. So, proportion of adults in 20 to 25 declines. So, there is a closure of demographic window, but next time there is more migration of say 35 plus or 40 plus or 50 plus, there is opening of demographic window. Depending on what kind of migrants leave and what kind of migrants return and when, and also depending on trends in fertility and mortality. Some researches have shown that in some Gulf countries, demographic window has opened and closed several times, and this makes an interesting question. Sociologists like you who are interested in the study of population, one has to study cycles of opening and closing of demographic window and its impact on population and economy. All developed countries are facing the problem of couples not having enough motivation to produce a baby. When we read articles in demography, in population and development review, and demographic articles in sociological journals, we find that in the context of developed countries, more articles now concentrate on third and fourth demographic transition and the issue of fertility going to below replacement level. Couples do not have enough motivation to produce a baby. There are changes in norms, there are changes in family structures, there are changes in gender balance within family. Because of that, children are not wanted. This is a very dangerous situation from the perspective of developed countries, but should we also not start thinking in these terms? We have always looked at a negative relationship between high fertility and economic development. Now, today when more and more of our states and a greater and greater proportion of our population will be experiencing this below replacement fertility, are we also not going to have the same kinds of dangers which the developed countries have, and should we not start talking about such dangers? I think time has come when, along with or more talking in terms of negative consequences of high fertility, we should also start examining negative effects of declining fertility for economy, for culture, kinship, religion, society, social structure, integration, unity and so on. So, we have to understand complex and symmetrical linkages between social structure and demographic factors at national, regional, village, household and individual levels. I remember that in the very first lecture I talked about social structure and demographic factors, that this course will be about social structure and demographic factors. But today I have added a phrase at national, regional, village, household and individual levels, that the relationship between social structure and demographic factors varies according to context and according to level of analysis. So, for example, a large number of couples in different parts of the country do not want a girl child. These are some new issues. Social structure and difficulties associated with raising a girl child, protecting her honor and arranging for her marriage, or discouraging parents from producing a female child. There may be many other factors also, but two most important factors behind decline of juvenile sex ratio are how to protect honor of the girl child in a society in which violence is spreading, increasing, and how to arrange for marriage of a daughter in a situation of increasing amount of dowry. There has been a worrisome decline in sex ratio in age group 0 to 6 in the decade 91 to 2001. Let us see what happens in 2011. Several religious organizations, activist groups, NGOs have been talking in terms of importance of girl child and that it is a heinous crime, an illegal act to go for sex determination, and in case they find that the child to be born is a girl, to go for feticide. We do not know whether efforts of these NGOs, civil society actors, religious groups, and also efforts of the state will bear fruit or not. Only 2011 census. Next year we will know what has happened. There some people are saying that perhaps in this respect situation will be improved, and some others are suspecting that maybe what has happened in Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, UP, Rajasthan, Delhi, the same thing is going to happen more and more to other states of India also. This is the result of combination of modern technology and tradition of patriarchy, and more populations have come under the aegis of patriarchy. Even tribal populations which had more of matrilineal, matrifocal system, matriarchal system, once they are converted to Christianity or Hinduism, all world religions are patriarchal, and this has made the tribal populations increasingly patriarchal. Affordable technical means to detect the sex of the baby during pregnancy and facilities to abort it, and weaknesses in law enforcing agencies are as such responsible for this as tradition, or maybe more than tradition. Traditionally, we did not have the problem of low juvenile sex ratio. It is not tradition, it is modernity, it is greed, it is fear, it is increasing violence, alienation in society, and its improvement in technology and affluence. Ironically, some of the regions where sex selective abortions are more prevalent are socioeconomically and educationally the most developed regions of the country. The combination of sex preference, medical technology, and economic development poses a very serious threat to social development, and if an effective strategy has to be developed to counter this pattern. In turn, declining child sex ratios are not going to remain inconsequential. They will have a definite impact on several institutions of society in the short run and also in the long run. There is a need to conduct studies of declining child sex ratios on marriage and kinship, religion and political institutions. These are new issues. So, one new issue is that the studies of relationship between social structure and demographic trends must be done contextually in different states, different regions and at different levels. And another issue is the issue of declining child sex ratio. That is very important issue. The third issue related to environment in the light of MDGs, sustainable development. Ignoring the concept of sustainable development, that is the neglect of demography of environment, will be perilous to society. In this framework, some new issues are, those of you who are computer savvy must have participated in PERN and PERN seminars on population and environment several times. Even the last month we had one. So, more people are taking interest in the relationship between population and environment. Recognition of differences, that is the condition that there are no simple and universal solutions to problems faced by people in different settings. There is no universal remedy to environmental problems or climate change problems. Again, as in case of demography, you need area specific approaches. Linking local with global, as one cannot anymore ignore the effects of global developments on local conditions or of local initiatives on global climate. So, although you require contextual studies, micro studies, meso studies, but there is an increasing realization that local and global are connected. Suppose you can find a global solution, global technological solution to the problem of waste from tanneries. Now, that global solution can be implemented in tanneries of Kanpur, and you can improve the quality of water in the river Ganges locally. That is the relationship between global and local. And if you can improve the quality of water in the river Ganges in Kanpur, you also improve the quality of water in Allahabad, in Varanasi, in Patna, and you also improve the quality of agriculture, quality of irrigation, quality of agriculture, and you also contribute to industrial and agricultural advancement of eastern UP, Bihar and West Bengal. That is the connection between local and global. Once talking about environment, I was telling that there are several countries in Europe which are not so industrialized and which are primarily based on agricultural production and processing industry, but they are as much suffering from environmental problems or climate change as their industrial neighbor, because the problem of pollution, climate change, etc., cannot remain confined to geographical or national boundaries. So, there is a need to combine demographic values with survival and progress separately at micro, meso and macro level. A strong commitment for empowerment and emancipation of the vulnerable groups, which is part of sustainable development. Sustainable development is not only a condition of survival of mankind, but it is also a condition of survival or participation of the vulnerable sections of society. So, we have to if we want a sustainable development, we have to have a strong commitment for empowerment and emancipation of the vulnerable groups, SCs, STs, OBCs, women, old, children, street children, beggars, drug dependents or drug misusers, families affected by rehabilitation, death of breadwinner and so on. Exploring the subjective meanings favorable to or against sustainability in the context of ethical and moral changes in society is equally important, because ultimately for action it is not the objective truths which are important, but the subjective meanings which ordinary people, you or me, ordinary people attach to their action, or environmental consciousness or environmental beliefs of ordinary people, masses, that is important. Socioeconomic, cultural and demographic systems in India are highly diversified. This is only to repeat what I have said. In this milieu, the perceptions of effects of population growth on people are as much linked with culture as with natural resources. Studies have also shown that experts and lay persons do not share the same value systems or ideas. That means, there is also a need to shift attention from purely economic connections to cultural connections, psychological connections and cultural connections. Cultural connections, culture means values, belief systems, religiosity. Psychology means drawing inferences not only about the objective reality only, but also exploring experts' beliefs, lay persons' beliefs or social representations. The way lay persons define their problems is not the same as the way program managers and NGOs define them. There are people in the country for whom survival is the highest value, even housing or shelter is of secondary importance to them. If we think that behind people's action it is their values and their beliefs, then we must also see that these values and beliefs are not universal. So, there is a need to explore values and beliefs. In one of our studies, we used to think that perhaps education or health or such things are of highest importance to people. In one of our studies done by one of our PhD students in our department, we found that actually it is household, the value of a householder, that is most important. Not even health or not even economic status. People are ready to sacrifice their health, people are ready to sacrifice their economic status, so that they can effectively play the role of a householder. Householders' values being culturally the most important values to them. So, we have to discover values. Among them, the goal of intervention should be their emancipation and empowerment. Among the things that we consider for intervention, emancipation and empowerment must be given due importance, not the reduction in family size or vaccination. These things have gone with first and second draft of population policy, Dr. Karan Singh and Janta policy. Now, with National Population Policy 2000 and Millennium Development Goals, there is greater emphasis on emancipation and empowerment, human rights, entitlements and so on. Globalization and the resulting marginalization of classes, castes, tribes and communities are producing uncertainties in demographic trends. If these people become more vulnerable, we do not know how will their demographics behave. Thus, sustainability and survival are the key issues to understanding demographic and social action. This means that some students of sociology interested in population issues must also take interest in environmental issues, environmental beliefs, social representations, meanings of experts, meanings of laypersons, how laypersons define their values, how experts define laypersons' values, and how values affect their decisions and actions. Now, some issues related to population policy more directly. The most crucial problem of population policy in India at the moment is the problem of lack of understanding of reproductive decision making process. We have done plenty of studies of relationship between demographic indicators, fertility, migration, urbanization and economic indicators, but we have not developed a good understanding of reproductive decision making. That is urgently required. In the recent past, during last 5 to 10 years, you find that more and more researchers are focusing on reproductive decision making rather than on fertility performance or family planning. Reproductive rationality is a rather unexplored area. Linking personal choices with social ethics is one of the greatest challenges of our times. How do people decide? How do individuals, how do couples, how do families decide? Sociologists cannot deny the fact that behind our reproductive decisions or our fertility preferences, there are social norms, institutions and structures. But what is happening to relationship between individual and social structure? With the process of increasing individualization, with the process of post-modernity of family, with changes in marriage age, institution of kinship, marriage and family. So, that is something that we have to understand, that if you are developing postmodern or differentiated forms of family, how will those differentiated families affect reproductive choices of individuals? Traditional societies do not have this problem, because individuals are closely tied to traditions and ego is only weakly developed. So, but modern societies too do not have this problem, because in modern society there is perfect individuation and there are no social pressure, no traditional kinship, caste, community pressures to produce more number of children. But in between, in countries like India, which are passing through a transitional phase, there is a conflict between individual rationality and norms of society. And how are different people, different families, different households responding to this conflict or this transition, that is to be understood. Western societies have developed institutionalized ways of handling problems arising out of individuation and alienation, though even modern societies have not so far been successful in changing attitudes of people in the interest of society. We have seen that in Europe they want pronatal policy, and pronatal policies in developed countries are as much a failure as antenatal policies in the less developed countries. So, there are problems, but in one respect our problems are more acute and we require more studies of linkages between individuals and social structure. The micro level and subjective calculations are against the change, otherwise they would not be facing the problems of fertility declining to below replacement level and the subsequent problem of aging. Social scientists must address this problem. A consensus seems to be emerging that population planning issues should form a part of empowerment and emancipation. National Population Policy 2000 rightly gives importance to education, immunization, lowering IMR, raising marriage age, increasing institutional deliveries, information, counseling, containing spread of HIV/AIDS, promotion of Indian systems of medicines and related social sector programs, all directly or indirectly linked with empowerment and emancipation. Some of these issues were included in the earlier policy statements also, but the shift of emphasis from national level to community level and shift of emphasis from targets to facilities is something to be celebrated and something which is new in new population policy. It is this framework of empowerment that should guide studies on and approaches to population policy and reproductive decisions. Let me also hurriedly say something about the history of empowerment, and then if you have any question, by then we can spend some time on that. You know that International Conference for Population and Development, which was held in 94 in Cairo, maintained that size, growth, age structure and rural urban distribution of a country have critical impact on development prospects, and it called on countries to quote fully integrate population concerns into development strategies, planning, decision making and resource allocation at all levels. The conference recognized that investing in people to broaden their potential as human beings is the key to sustained economic growth and sustainable development. ICPD also fixed the following what they called mutually supportive goals: gender equality, reduction in IMR, child mortality, maternal mortality. You see, some of these targets were different from the targets fixed by Millennium Development Goals, like Millennium Development Goals for IMR and child mortality are lower, though for maternal mortality it is higher than 60, it is about 109. So, many of these points are very similar: improvement in education, reproductive health, institutional delivery, meeting unmet needs. And in the following year, 4th conference on women was held in Beijing. It lent further support to the above goals. So there is a long history of empowerment and participation. ICPD 1994 goals further reverberate in the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. One can say that there is nothing new in Millennium Development Goals. Actually, ICPD 94 goals only are reverberated from 1994 in International Conference on Population and Development. Already a paradigm shift had started. Now, considering all this, we can summarize that there is a paradigm shift in sociology of population. This shift is from estimation to explanation. Estimation of birth rate, estimation of death rate, estimation of birth intervals, open and closed birth intervals, parameters of chi-squares and mixtures of chi-squares, essentially from quantitative methods to qualitative methods. There is a shift from quantitative to qualitative. There is also a shift from study of demographic processes to health and emancipation. This paradigm shift is caused by both improved data, partly because there is more improved data, more reliable, more valid data on demographic trends, and partly in the intellectual climate there is a change. So far the emphasis was on exploring scientific correlations between different processes. Now there is shift to complex relationships and social representations. The above shift has several implications for the discourse in the broader field of population studies. It is not possible to address the new issues caused by shifting paradigm in the conservative framework. There is a need for anthropologists and sociologists to come together, psychologists and anthropologists to come together, psychologists and sociologists to come together. I have tried to summarize the key aspects of the old and new approach in the form of a table, and I have tried to say that the population policy must address the issue of population in a holistic manner rather than analytical manner, rather than at the national or regional level. It has to go to micro level, district, block and village and household, ultimately household or individual level. You may not agree with all the points shown here, but broadly speaking, the major assumption of the old approach was that population has adverse effect on development. Now, the new approach will say that the relationship is dynamic, situational and symmetric. Earlier we used positivism as a theory, now we are using more of a social constructivism, knowingly or unknowingly. We have moved away from analytical approach to holistic approach. In methodology, surveys and fieldwork based studies are being substituted by qualitative studies such as situation analysis and mapping. Earlier the level of analysis was national and regional. In the context of India, region means state. Now, there is a shift of attention to district and community with a special emphasis on SC, ST, OBC and urban slums. The concepts which were at one time scientific, now they are more of subjective and relative. Emphasis in planning is at the community intervention, Panchayati Raj institutions rather than national and regional plans. Major actors in the past were government, now they are research groups, NGOs and CBOs. CBO is emerging as a CBO means community based organization. NGOs work at regional level, district level, CBOs work at the grassroots level, community. So, there is a shift in attention from national level NGOs and state to NGOs working at lower levels and community based organization. The goal of research is no more development of objective knowledge, it is the problem solving, enabling the community. Empowerment means enabling the community to analyze their problems and empowering people. Resources of researchers and planners and activists are not the hard facts so much, but conceptual maps, social representations and networks. The goal of policy, which was earlier stabilization of population, now it is more of participatory development involving community resources, and public private partnership has become an important buzzword of emerging policy. In this context, let me also spend 2-3 minutes on the meaning of participation. Participation is often a misunderstood term. There is a need to define the term, what do we mean by participation in the present in the emerging framework of empowerment and social representations. In some or other form, the notion of participation has always been there in population policy. In the past also, population policy suggested making family planning a people's movement. Dr. Karan Singh, when he said that we will make family planning a people's movement, certainly some kind of notion of participation was there, but it was just a pretense to impose the elite perspective of population on people. Participation of people was seen either as consultative participation, in which people were supposed to come to clinics and get counseling and services, or functional, in which participation was seen as a means to achieve the project goals. There is a need to go for interactive participation, in which people participate in joint analysis. You make people part of your analysis, planning, action, development of action plans, group decisions and movement towards self mobilization. In this respect, participation is a new thing. When Dr. Karan Singh said that let us make family planning a people's movement, the idea was obviously one can say that the idea of family planning was Dr. Karan Singh's idea. It was state's idea, it was intellectuals or experts or academicians' idea, and this idea was to be imposed, or people were to be informed or convinced or motivated to accept this idea. Today the meaning of participation is that let us involve people not only in implementing family planning agenda, but in analyzing their situation, through their own conceptual apparatuses, help them in developing their own local action plan, district plans, block plans, panchayat plans, and let us help them in taking group decisions and let them help in moving towards self mobilization, not mobilization by others, not by health minister anymore, not by experts or academicians anymore, but self mobilization of people. Let the people analyze their situation, make plan for themselves, mobilize themselves to attain to achieve a better quality of life. This also entails understanding of social representations of family and health at the community level. Under the aegis of participatory model, social scientists must try to unearth the meanings and social representations of life and social processes and the role of family size in this. Actually, understanding of life and social processes is more important, and understanding of role of family size must be seen only as a part of that. Health psychologists have already done pioneering work in the field of social representations of health, and social scientists working on population and development issues may benefit immensely from the works of such health psychologists, from the works of Hercules, Moscovici. Some of our PhD students in the field of health and population have already made use of social representation approach of Hercules and Moscovici. These studies will show that social representations of reproductive health are fluid, they are changing, they are not same, they vary from one place to another, and they in the same space, same locale, they change with changes in the environmental condition, they change with economic development, political changes, when the local cultures come in contact with the larger culture, or when there is more interaction between micro and macro, or little tradition or great tradition, there are changes. Field view and textual view. For example, Bhatia and Cleland found that anxiety, stress and overwork may be associated with reported gynecological morbidity among poor urban women. Now, what they report about gynecological morbidity may not be true for rural women or rich urban women. The reality has become so disaggregated. By the way, I must also tell that another shift in attention in sociology of health is to shift from mortality to morbidity. Earlier we were studying more of mortality, death rates, age specific death rates, life expectancy, conditional life expectancy, years of life lost due to different diseases. Now, there is greater shift towards morbidity or diseases. Studies have shown that morbidity should be an issue in itself, even in those states like Kerala, where mortality has declined and life expectancy has increased, morbidity rates have not necessarily declined. We must understand morbidity patterns, causes of morbidity patterns, relationship between economic condition and social structure on the one hand, and morbidity patterns on the other, develop ways through participatory methods to identify major morbidity patterns and to deal with them, to mitigate the morbidity situation. According to NSSO data, as many as 50% spells of ailments in urban areas remained untreated because they were not considered to be serious. Actually, it is this point that relates us to the point of social representations by Hercules and Moscovici. If the people do not consider their diseases to be diseases, they will not come forward for their treatment or remedies. One such problem is the problem of RTI, STI, RTI. Qualitative and quantitative studies show that in our country, due to anemia, malnutrition, infection, poverty, ignorance, a large percentage of women are suffering from STI, RTI. But there is very little realization of this by women themselves, and quite often even when they suffer from pain or some consequence of RTI, STI, they think that it is natural. It is natural for women to have these kinds of problems, and since it is natural, no remedy is required. once they make RTI, STI natural, then nothing is to be done. So, there is a need to understand social representations of people, and once we know that ignorance or these kinds of problems are there behind people's lack of action to remedy the situations, we can help the people by creating interaction between lay persons and experts. But first, lay persons representations have to be understood. Modernization and postmodernization have posed challenges to traditional culture, and demographers need to understand its full implications for finding ways of development of various communities and classes. Health is a broad issue now, and so from mortality to morbidity to health. With health, we also have a new notion of positive health. Health not merely the absence of diseases, but also as a positive concept of quality of life. We need to study. Some of you maybe after doing your MA, when you go for MPhil and or when after doing your graduation in different professional subjects, you go for higher level of studies. You may be taking up studies of social representations of health, positive health, quality of life, happiness, and health choices. What combination of health facilities are used by people in different circumstances? Allopathic, biomedical, homeopathic, Ayurvedic, Unani, Siddha, local herbal remedies, magic and other traditional practices. Researchers show that people do not think in either or terms, and depending on their understanding and needs, they make combinations of all of them. Then quality of services, then factors affecting institutional deliveries, postpartum hemorrhage and other determinants of maternal death such as transport facilities, access to and quality of services. This public private partnership has a new mechanism. We have not yet fully understood the nature of it, effectiveness of success of it, and how can we promote a meaningful public private partnership in the field of health, population and development. Government of India has gone for public private partnership in health in a big way. Public and private systems have their own strengths and weaknesses. The idea was benefit from the strengths of both to escape the weaknesses of both. Studies are needed to explore to what extent we have succeeded in doing so, and what combinations of the two are good for society, and what ways of delivering health services need to be developed to have optimal benefits. What should be the role of public sector, what should be the role of private sector. Working in the field of health means having interventions and flows at several levels: knowledge generation, resources, institution building, communication, services. So, what should be the role of public sector, what should be the role of private sector, how to make an optimum combination of the two at various levels. What is optimum at village level may be different from what is optimum at the district or state level, and so these are some new issues. In the next lecture, we will bind up the whole discussion. I am sure that there is at least one question.
Yes. Sir, while you were talking about people making personal choices, then how do they link, what is the linkage between social ethics and personal choices? Are they compelled to do so, or is it out of choice?
Social ethics and personal choices. Here social ethics may be seen in two ways. One in terms of what should happen, and another social ethics as factors influencing people's decision making through the process of socialization. Now, normally what is happening that there was a time when our media, our books, our scientific literature and our elite started saying that traditional or endogenous knowledge system is mostly based on tradition, superstitions, ill understanding of health processes, and we should do away with it and go for scientific understanding and scientific medicine. But on the basis of their own experiences, people found that there are many things in the tradition or in Ayurveda, in Siddha, in Unani, in homeopathy, which are effective and useful, or sometime in rural areas or tribal areas they are the only source where western or modern medical system has not reached. So, the first choice of people is the Ojha or the herbal or traditional medicine, or if there is an Ayurvedic practitioner, sometime Ojha, Tadvis, Ayurvedic practitioners, all these roles are combined in one person, and they have a very wide networks. That is another thing that is an important issue for study by sociologists and anthropologists. We have studied some such network of Ojhas in the context of Udaipur, Rajasthan. So, but today even the elite are saying that there was some element of that we can combine the traditional system with modern system. Government of India is also supportive of Ayush, Ayurveda, Unani system of medicine and homeopathy. So, government is supporting. There have been researches in centers of scientific research, All India Institute of Medical Sciences and Institute of Medical Sciences in BHU. They are conducting researches on traditional medicine, Ayurveda, yoga, and now the trend seems to be that let the clients be empowered, and on the basis of their experiences and on the basis of local resources, services available to them, let them make the choice of what is optimum combination for them. So, there is no ideological or scientific kind of threat to traditional or endogenous wisdom anymore. Another problem with allopathic or scientific medicine, that it has advanced to that level that due to strong side effects, doctors are not now in a moral position to say what is right or what is wrong for the patients. So, they will only tell what are various choices. They should morally they must apprise their clients of all the positive and negative effects of all the choices, and ultimately it is the patient or the client who take the decision.